What if the life you're living right now isn't reality at all, but simply your imagination made visible? Neville Goddard said, "Feeling is the secret," and he meant it literally. The moment you feel something as real, the universe begins to rearrange itself to make it true. Most people wait for proof before they believe, but those who understand this law do the opposite. They believe first, and reality catches up. This isn't philosophy, it's creation science. Every house, every relationship, every success story began as an invisible image in someone's mind, felt into being through faith. You've done it too, though maybe unconsciously. Imagined a worry until it became true, or rehearsed a dream until it found you. The power has always been there. It just needs to be aimed on purpose. In this video, you'll discover how imagination becomes the bridge between what is and what can be, how feeling turns invisible thought into physical fact, and how the quiet act of assuming your wish fulfilled can shift your world faster than effort or struggle ever could. Because reality doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you believe you already are. And once you learn to live from that end, you'll stop waiting for change and start being it. Everything that has ever come into being began in the quiet corners of imagination. Long before a city rises, before a book is written, or before a dream becomes a career, someone first dared to imagine it. Neville Goddard reminds us that imagination isn't just daydreaming, it's the original act of creation. When a person learns to feel their ideas as real, that invisible picture starts to form its way into the visible world. What begins as a thought quietly insists on becoming form. Think of the way a painter starts with a blank canvas. Before the brush touches paint, the image already exists in his mind. He can almost feel the colors, the texture, the emotion of the finished piece. That same invisible artistry is at play in every human life. The imagination is not a toy. It's the unseen workshop of reality itself. Each time someone visualizes with conviction, the universe begins rearranging itself to match that inner scene. Most people underestimate how vivid imagination can be. They believe reality is something fixed, but every building, song, and invention around them began as a whisper in someone's consciousness. The feeling of certainty that follows an imagined idea is what gives it life. When you assume something inwardly, you plant its seed in the field of manifestation. The outer world, obedient to inner vision, simply catches up. Neville often said that feeling is the bridge between the unseen and the seen. It's not enough to casually imagine. You must embody the emotion of "it's already done." That feeling gives substance to what's only a mental image. Like heat to metal, feeling softens reality until it can be reshaped. Imagination then becomes not a fantasy, but a blueprint waiting for expression. Children naturally understand this law. Watch them play, and you'll see them completely lost in their inner world, believing the floor is lava or the stick is a sword. They feel their stories into existence. As adults, we forget that this playful power never left us. It only became buried under reason and fear. To imagine freely again is to recover the faith we once had as children, that what we see inside will one day stand before us. The secret is learning to trust imagination more than circumstance. Circumstance reports what has been. Imagination reveals what can be. When a person chooses to imagine deliberately, they no longer react, they create. Neville Goddard called this the divine power within man, to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and let life mirror it back. In that mirror, thought becomes experience. Consider how scientists, artists, and dreamers all operate from this same inner law. Before a rocket could reach the moon, someone had to imagine every screw, every trajectory, every risk. The imagination led, and technology followed. This is the rhythm of creation. Vision first, manifestation second. Feeling turns the invisible into a command the universe must obey. But imagination isn't just for grand achievements. It governs the quiet corners of daily life, how one expects a conversation to go, how they see their future, even how they interpret their past. The mind constantly visualizes outcomes, often unconsciously, and those images harden into personal reality. To change life, one must first change the pictures they habitually hold inside. Imagine holding a seed in your hand. The tree already exists within it, though unseen. That's how every desire begins, in miniature, invisible, yet complete. Through persistence and care, it pushes through the soil of the unseen until it becomes visible. The same process happens when you sustain an idea in imagination long enough for feeling to take root. The inner image grows stronger than doubt. So, When Neville said, "All things exist in the human imagination," he wasn't being poetic, he was being literal. Reality is simply imagination solidified. Once this truth is felt, life becomes less about effort and more about awareness. The question shifts from, "How do I make it happen?" to, "What am I imagining right now?" Because the next scene of life is already forming in the workshop of your mind, waiting for you to notice it. Before anything appears in the world, it must first be seen within. Every bridge, song, relationship, or invention began as a silent image in someone's imagination. The outer world is nothing more than the shadow of an inner act. Neville Goddard used to say that imagination is the beginning of all creation. It's the divine seed planted in the soil of consciousness. When you learn to imagine deliberately, you reclaim your creative power and stop living as a victim of chance. Imagination is not fantasy. Fantasy is detached from feeling, while imagination is alive with emotion, intention, and faith. The moment you feel your idea as possible, you begin the act of creation. The sculptor sees the statue before carving, and the architect walks through a building that doesn't yet exist. They visualize, assume, and believe long before the first brick is laid. That's the pattern of life itself. Consciousness first, matter second. Think of a person who decides to change careers. Before any resume is updated, before any interview takes place, the transformation begins with imagination. They start to see themselves differently, to visualize waking up in a new rhythm, speaking with confidence, feeling aligned with purpose. That inner movie generates emotion, and emotion reshapes identity. The world simply rearranges to match that new inner image. When imagination is neglected, life becomes mechanical, repetitive, and uninspired. People wait for circumstances to give them permission to dream, not realizing that imagination is what changes circumstance in the first place. The creative mind doesn't react. It initiates. It moves first within, then watches the echo appear without. Neville would call this living from the end, because creation begins where the desired story is already complete. The most powerful creators aren't those who work the hardest, they're those who see the clearest. Their inner vision is so vivid it feels tangible. When they imagine, their senses participate. They can smell the air, hear the sounds, feel the emotions of that fulfilled state. That is why imagination and feeling must move together. Feeling turns a mental picture into a living seed that reality cannot ignore. Every movement in life mirrors imagination. If one constantly imagines lack, fear, or failure, those seeds blossom just the same. The law of attraction is impartial. It responds to the state you dwell in, not the words you say. That's why Neville emphasized imagination as prayer. What you continually assume inwardly becomes what you experience outwardly. It's a sacred responsibility, but also a liberation. To create consciously, you must give imagination direction. Don't let it drift through worry or regret. Guide it toward the vision you desire. Close your eyes and build scenes that imply fulfillment. Don't force, simply feel the naturalness of already being there. Let imagination do the heavy lifting. The mind loves clear images, and the clearer they are, the faster reality conforms. Some people fear imagination because they think it separates them from reality. In truth, it's the opposite. Imagination is what connects you to the deeper reality that precedes form. The unseen world is the blueprint, and your inner pictures are the instructions the universe follows. To imagine is to command quietly, with faith instead of effort. So when Neville said, "You first had to imagine everything concerning the machine that took you to the moon," he was reminding us that creation always starts invisibly. What we call innovation is just imagination meeting persistence. Every progress humanity ever made began as a dream someone refused to dismiss. Imagination is not a luxury, it's the root of evolution. And when that truth finally settles in, life begins to feel different. You no longer chase outcomes, you cultivate inner pictures. You stop worrying about how and start choosing what. Because once the image is clear and the feeling is real, creation has already begun to move. The next question isn't if it will happen, but when. When a person truly assumes an inner state, the outer world bends to match it. Neville Goddard often said, "No power on earth can stop it from becoming so." It's not arrogance, it's law. The universe is a mirror reflecting consciousness, and once a new self-concept is accepted as truth, everything external rearranges itself in obedience. What you assume with full conviction becomes inevitable. because reality is only an echo of imagination sustained by feeling. Most people wait for conditions to give them permission to believe, but that's not how manifestation works. Belief comes first, proof follows. When someone decides inwardly, "This is who I am now," the world cannot help but conform to that vibration. It might take time for appearances to shift, but the outcome is already secured in consciousness. Persistence turns invisible assumption into tangible fact, step by step, moment by moment. Imagine you're tuning a radio. Once you lock onto a frequency, you can only receive what matches it. The same principle governs life. Every assumption is a frequency of being, and when you stay tuned to one long enough, you begin to experience everything that aligns with it. That's why Neville insisted that nothing external can resist a fully accepted inner reality. The station can't refuse the signal. Think of someone who decides they are no longer poor, sick, or unloved. They don't beg for change, they embody it. Their words, tone, and posture shift because they feel different inside. At first, the world may mock their confidence, but soon, circumstance begins to rearrange. New opportunities, new people, new energy. Why? Because the inner state always dictates the outer experience. The challenge lies in maintaining faith when results are invisible. The senses scream nothing's happening, but the wise soul knows that assumption works beneath the surface. Like a seed beneath soil, creation unfolds in silence. You don't dig up the seed every day to check its growth. You water it, trust it, and wait. The same patience applies to every inner assumption. Neville called doubt the only devil. When you argue with your desire, you step out of the state that creates it. The trick is to feel as though it's already done, even when logic disagrees. This is not pretending, it's choosing which reality to inhabit. Each feeling is a doorway, and once you enter the room of conviction, no external storm can throw you out unless you let it. Faith doesn't mean ignoring reality, it means realizing that imagination is the higher reality. What's seen is temporary, what's felt inwardly is eternal. That's why people who live by faith seem untouchable. They act from a certainty others can't see, yet soon everyone else begins to see it too. A fully assumed state is not forced, it's felt. Once felt deeply enough, the world must follow. You've likely experienced this without realizing it. Think of times you were certain about something, good or bad, and it inevitably happened. That certainty was an assumption that hardened into fact. The difference now is learning to assume consciously instead of by habit. When awareness becomes deliberate, creation becomes predictable. So, the next time you desire change, don't fight the external conditions. Don't plead. Don't push. Go within and claim the feeling of already having what you seek. Live as though the prayer has been answered, because in imagination, it already has. The moment you fully assume the state, the process begins, quietly, surely, irresistibly, and perhaps that's the most comforting truth. Once you feel it real, no force on earth can undo it. The external world is only clay. Your inner conviction is the sculptor. So hold the image, feel the state, and persist. The form will follow, just as surely as dawn follows night. Prayer, as Neville Goddard taught, isn't about asking or pleading. It's about assuming and feeling that your desire is already fulfilled. True prayer begins where effort ends. It's the quiet inner act of claiming the invisible as real. When a person prays correctly, they don't beg a distant power to intervene. They awaken the divine imagination within themselves. In that moment of stillness, they become one with the thing hoped for, and the feeling of fulfillment becomes the prayer itself. Most people approach prayer as if they were powerless, trying to convince God to grant a favor. But Neville flipped that idea upside down. He said that prayer is not a petition, but an appropriation, to take something inwardly as yours before the world can confirm it. It's the difference between hoping and knowing. When you close your eyes and feel the satisfaction of your wish already realized, you move from separation to union. That is true communion with God. Imagine someone who longs for healing. The usual way is to plead, "Please make me well." But Neville would say, enter the state of being well. Feel the ease in your body. Visualize moving freely. Sense the relief and gratitude as if it's already done. That act of feeling sends a command through consciousness more powerful than any spoken word. The prayer has been answered the moment it's felt real. Prayer in this sense is not limited to religion. It's the natural law of creation. Every moment you imagine, you pray. Every inner picture charged with emotion is a request to the universe. The question isn't whether you're praying, but what state you're praying from. Are you praying from lack or from fulfillment? From fear or from faith? Conscious prayer chooses the latter. Neville's words, "Prayer is nothing more than the subjective appropriation of the object desired," carry a secret simplicity. Subjective means inward, personal, invisible. Appropriation means to claim as one's own. So, real prayer is an act of spiritual possession. You possess the feeling of the fulfilled desire before possessing its form. This inward ownership is what sets manifestation in motion. When you pray this way, words become almost unnecessary. A single moment of pure feeling can outweigh hours of repetitive speech. You might simply whisper "thank you" while resting in the vibration of having received. That gratitude becomes magnetic. It's faith in motion. The heart believes first, and the outer world confirms later. Prayer also redefines how we see time. The ego says, "Someday this will happen." The soul says, "It already is." By entering the fulfilled state now, you dissolve the distance between desire and realization. In imagination, there's no waiting. Everything exists simultaneously. The mind that can feel now what it longs for later is the mind that creates miracles. Even simple desires follow this pattern. Picture someone praying for peace of mind. Instead of resisting anxiety, they close their eyes and imagine what peace feels like. The softness in the chest, the calm in the breath, the gentle rhythm of life flowing easily. By feeling it first, they become it. That inner shift becomes the answer to their own prayer. Prayer then is both art and science, the art of surrendering to feeling and the science of assuming the state desired. When practiced daily, it reshapes not only circumstances, but identity itself. You begin to realize that God isn't outside listening. God is the imagination within, responding instantly to your inner assumption. And when you finally grasp this, prayer stops being an act of desperation and becomes a dance of creation. You no longer ask, you align. You no longer plead, you assume. And as that inner conversation deepens, something changes quietly. You stop wondering if your desire will come and start living as though it already has. Neville Goddard said that feeling is the secret because nothing changes until emotion enters imagination. Thought alone is weak. Feeling gives it power, shape, and movement. To feel as if your desire were already real is to breathe life into it. The subconscious responds not to words, but to the vibration of belief. When you feel something deeply enough, it becomes a command to reality. That's why the world always mirrors emotion more than logic. Imagine someone who wants abundance. They can repeat affirmations all day, but if their feeling remains lack, nothing shifts. Yet the moment they close their eyes and feel what abundance would be like, the relief, the freedom, the gratitude, the energy begins to move. That emotional conviction is the secret doorway through which the unseen enters the seen. It's not imagination that creates alone, but imagination charged with feeling. This is why Neville told people to practice sensory visualization. Don't just see the picture. Touch it, hear it, smell it, taste it. The richer the sensory experience, the stronger the belief. When you feel yourself in the wish fulfilled, you've already crossed the bridge between thought and fact. Reality has no choice but to comply, because consciousness is its origin. Feeling is often misunderstood as mere emotion. It's deeper than that. It's the inner knowing that something is. You don't have to fight for it, just accept it. It's the same calm assurance you feel when you know the sun will rise tomorrow. That's the kind of quiet conviction that turns assumptions into form. When you learn to live from that certainty, creation feels effortless. Think of how an actor prepares for a role. They don't just memorize lines, they inhabit the character until it feels natural. That's the essence of this law. You must become the person who already has the thing you desire. Speak, move, and think from that identity. The outer scene will rearrange itself to match the inner performance. Life imitates the script you write in feeling. Most people struggle because they pray with words, but doubt with feeling. They declare faith verbally, but vibrate with fear internally. The subconscious listens only to the vibration. That's why two people can repeat the same affirmation, yet one sees results and the other doesn't. The difference lies in who feels it real. The feeling, not the phrase, is the prayer that's heard. This principle applies everywhere. In relationships, success, health, everything responds to the state you embody. If you feel loved, love finds you. If you feel unworthy, rejection repeats. Feeling is the magnetic force that pulls experience into alignment. Change the emotion behind the thought, and the thought instantly gains creative authority. When you begin practicing this consciously, you'll notice how the body and senses participate. The breath deepens, the muscles relax, the heart opens. These are signs that the new assumption is taking root. The more natural it feels, the closer you are to its manifestation. What feels real within soon becomes real without. Neville often said, "You must feel the thrill of accomplishment before it's seen." That thrill is faith in motion. It's proof of creation already begun. Don't wait for evidence to feel joy. Feel joy to create evidence. Emotion is the engine, imagination is the steering wheel. Together they drive destiny. And once you taste that power, you stop trying to make things happen and start letting them unfold. The feeling of fulfillment becomes your atmosphere, your natural home. And from that home, everything you need starts finding its way to you, quietly, faithfully, and without resistance. Neville Goddard taught that imagination is not just visual, it's sensory. The more vividly you can feel, hear, smell, taste, and touch your imagined scene, the more real it becomes to your subconscious. Each sense adds a layer of credibility to the picture in your mind. When the senses agree, belief strengthens, and belief is what manifests. The invisible turns visible the moment imagination becomes a full-body experience. Close your eyes and imagine holding a rose. You can almost feel its texture, the softness of the petals, the slight coolness of the stem. Now smell it. That fragrance is imagination translating into sensation. It doesn't matter that no rose is physically there. The body doesn't know the difference. The subconscious accepts sensory experience as fact, and the outer world follows suit. That's how creation begins, from invisible feeling to visible form. Think about how easily fear works. A person merely imagines danger, and the body reacts. Heart races, palms sweat, breathing quickens. That's proof that imagination, when emotionally charged, produces real physical change. The same mechanism that fuels fear can be used for faith. When you use your senses to experience what you desire, the body and mind align in agreement, and manifestation becomes inevitable. Neville would often give simple exercises. Feel the weight of a coin, the texture of silk, the difference between a baseball and a golf ball. These weren't random examples. They were lessons in sensory imagination. The more specific you get, the more the inner scene solidifies. Precision builds faith, and faith is the creative energy that reshapes reality. Every sense is a bridge. The eyes of imagination see what isn't yet there. The ears hear conversations that confirm your desire fulfilled. The hands feel what the heart already owns. Smell and taste, too, have their roles. They anchor emotion. When you imagine eating your favorite meal after a victory, you're already feasting in the state of success. That's how the unseen becomes inevitable. It's also why daydreaming without feeling rarely changes anything. Casual imagination lacks sensory engagement. But when you involve all senses, the dream becomes tangible. You stop trying to believe and start experiencing belief. The line between inner and outer blurs, and the subconscious receives a clear instruction. This is real. Even the smallest moments can be transformed by sensory imagination. Picture yourself hearing words of appreciation from someone you love. Imagine their voice, their tone, the warmth in the moment. Feel the relief and joy as if it's happening now. When done sincerely, you'll notice your emotions shifting instantly. That shift is the seed of manifestation. The practice is not about forcing the mind, it's about relaxing into the scene until it feels natural. When the senses participate effortlessly, imagination moves from thinking to knowing. You no longer hope, it simply is. The moment something feels real, creation is complete in the invisible realm. The physical world is only catching up. Sensory imagination also deepens faith. It teaches that reality is flexible, responsive, and alive. The same senses that once trapped you in limitation become tools of liberation. Seeing, hearing, and feeling differently reshape your relationship with life. You start realizing that imagination is not escapism, it's instruction. And once you master this sensory dialogue, the world begins to echo it back. You start to meet the very scenes you rehearsed inwardly, often in the most natural ways. What once felt distant becomes familiar. That's the magic Neville spoke of, when imagination ceases to be fantasy and becomes the most reliable bridge between desire and manifestation. Neville Goddard used to say that everything has a spiritual essence. even the things we call material. Yes, even money. It isn't just paper, metal, or digital numbers. It carries a vibration, a scent, a feeling. To the one who understands this, wealth is not something to chase, but a state to assume. You can smell it, touch it, feel its texture in imagination long before it reaches your hands. That's how inner reality precedes the outer form. When Neville described money's distinct odor, he was teaching that every object, every situation, has an inner signature. The miser can sense it instantly, just as an artist senses beauty before the brush moves. It's the same law applied differently. Each thing exists first as consciousness, and what you feel about it determines how it appears in your life. Feel lack, and you push it away. Feel richness, and life responds with generosity. Money, like every other manifestation, flows toward the consciousness that matches it. That's why struggling for it rarely works. It's born from the state of not having. But the moment you start feeling wealth within, without any proof, the world begins to rearrange. Opportunities, ideas, and coincidences appear. They're not luck. They're reflections of your inner state taking form. Neville wanted people to go beyond surface thinking. He wasn't telling you to obsess over money, but to understand its essence. Money is simply energy given structure by belief. The more love, respect, and neutrality you feel toward it, the more naturally it flows. The more fear or guilt you associate with it, the more it hides. Your emotional tone toward money writes its script in your reality. Try a simple experiment. Sit quietly and imagine holding a few bills in your hand. Feel their texture. Hear the faint rustle as you count them. Smell that subtle scent of ink and paper. Now feel the ease of having enough, the peace of being provided for. This is not delusion. It's education for your subconscious. It learns reality through sensory emotion, not logic. Those who live in abundance all share one thing. They feel wealth even when they don't yet have it physically. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. They assume the identity of someone who already has what they need, and the world mirrors that confidence back to them. It's the same law that governs everything else in creation. What you feel yourself to be, you become. This understanding also frees you from envy. When you know that everything begins within, another person's success becomes evidence of what's possible, not a threat. You realize that abundance isn't limited, it's infinite, waiting for whoever imagines it sincerely. The moment you assume the vibration of gratitude and sufficiency, you enter the same current. Money itself is neutral. It only amplifies the state of the one who holds it. To the fearful, it creates anxiety. To the generous, it becomes a tool for good. This is why Neville always brought the focus back to consciousness, not circumstance. Change your state, and every form, including money, must obey. If you close your eyes and feel rich, even for a few seconds, you'll notice something subtle. Your posture changes, your breath deepens, your mind quiets. That's the language of manifestation, your body confirming what your spirit already knows. Keep returning to that state until it feels natural. Nature doesn't rush growth, but it never fails. And soon the outer world begins to echo that inner tone. Unexpected blessings appear, creative ideas flow, and peace replaces tension. You start realizing that money was never the goal, it was the mirror. The real treasure is mastering the feeling of abundance itself, because once you own that within, every other form of wealth must follow. Neville Goddard revealed one of the most compassionate uses of imagination, creating lovingly on behalf of others. He said that whenever you imagine the best for someone, you become a mediator of God to that person. To imagine another as fulfilled, healthy, joyful, or free is not fantasy. It's an act of spiritual love. You silently lift them to a higher state of being, and because consciousness is one, that new image begins to move in their life. We often underestimate how powerful our inner perception of others truly is. Every time you hold someone in your thoughts, you either imprison them in their current condition or free them into a better one. To imagine lovingly is to choose faith over judgment. It's seeing the divine potential in them even when appearances disagree. Neville would say, see them as they ought to be and persist until that vision feels real. Think of a friend struggling financially or emotionally. Instead of worrying or criticizing, you can close your eyes and imagine them smiling, confident, peaceful. Hear them telling you how things turned around. Feel the warmth of their gratitude. That simple inner act begins to rewrite the script of their reality. You don't need to speak it aloud. The unseen world hears the language of feeling perfectly. This kind of prayer doesn't demand recognition or praise. It's quiet, humble, and deeply powerful. You're not forcing your will upon another. You're aligning with their higher self, their divine essence. You're seeing them through the eyes of love, not pity. In that moment, you and they are one consciousness, creating a new possibility. Neville often said that what you imagine for another, you also plant within yourself. Every loving assumption you make blesses you as well. When you hold another in a state of joy, you can't help but feel that joy in your own heart. It becomes a double miracle. What you give internally, you receive. Love expressed in imagination never returns void. It's important to approach this practice without trying to fix anyone. You're not rescuing them, you're remembering their wholeness. The true act of faith is to assume they are already complete, already blessed, already standing in victory. By imagining from that end, you invite their higher reality to emerge naturally. There's a quiet confidence in this kind of creation. You no longer need to interfere, preach, or persuade. You simply imagine and trust. Life takes care of the rest. Often people you've prayed for will show up transformed, not knowing why, but you will. You'll recognize the reflection of the image you sustained in secret. This practice also softens the heart. It trains you to see beyond appearances, beyond flaws or mistakes. It dissolves resentment and awakens compassion. You begin to realize that everyone is a mirror of consciousness. Your world is full of reflections, asking to be seen with love. Imagining lovingly becomes the purest form of forgiveness. It may seem small, but it can change entire relationships. Instead of arguing with someone's behavior, imagine their peace. Instead of fearing their downfall, imagine their healing. This inner act breaks the chain of reaction and replaces it with divine creation. It's how you turn conflict into blessing. And perhaps the greatest beauty of all, when you live this way, love becomes your default vibration. You start walking through life as a silent healer, changing the atmosphere wherever you go. Every thought becomes a prayer, every assumption an offering. You realize that to imagine lovingly is not only to help others, it's to remember that you and they were never separate. Neville Goddard taught that assumption alone begins creation, but persistence completes it. The moment you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, the seed is planted. Yet it's persistence, the daily returning to that inner state, that allows the seed to grow. Many abandon their desires too soon, digging up the soil to check if it's working. But the wise creator knows, what's nourished consistently must appear. Persistence is faith in action. When you assume a new identity, the outer world might not agree immediately. Old conditions echo for a while. That's when persistence matters most. You keep imagining, keep feeling, keep knowing, even when nothing seems to change. You don't fight appearances, you outlast them. Reality, by law, must yield to the most dominant state. The one who persists inwardly always wins. Think of a musician learning to play. The first notes are clumsy, the rhythm off, but repetition transforms noise into music. The same applies to assumption. At first, it may feel unnatural to believe in something unseen, but with practice, the feeling grows familiar. Eventually, it becomes second nature, and the world mirrors it back with perfect harmony. Persistence isn't effort, it's constancy. It's not forcing results, but returning calmly to the inner knowing that it is done. The outer world might delay, but it can't deny. Time simply gives imagination room to solidify. The person who persists doesn't rush the process. They trust it. They know creation unfolds in silence long before the evidence appears. Neville used to say, an assumption, though false at the moment if persisted in, will harden into fact. That single sentence contains the blueprint for every success story. False now means nothing. Persistence makes it true. What you feel real often enough becomes your world, no matter how impossible it once seemed. The universe always bows to conviction. Many give up because they mistake delay for denial. But delay is proof that the old state is dying, not that the new one failed. Persistence is the gentle insistence that truth remains truth no matter what. Each time you return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you water the seed. Eventually, the soil cracks open, and what was invisible becomes undeniable. Think of nature. Seasons never rush, yet everything blooms right on time. The same rhythm governs imagination. If you persist without anxiety, creation matures perfectly. Impatience is disbelief. Persistence is faith. The one who persists doesn't need to see results. They feel them already alive within. That inner steadiness is irresistible to reality. Persistence also builds character. It transforms you from a seeker into a knower. Each time you reaffirm your assumption despite appearances, your confidence deepens. You start realizing that the outer world has no real authority. It only echoes your sustained feeling. What once intimidated you now feels malleable, obedient to your imagination. Even simple practices, like imagining one scene of fulfillment every night before sleep, can change a life when done persistently. Neville called sleep the gateway to creation because the subconscious accepts every image impressed upon it repeatedly. Night after night, you impress the same assumption until it becomes the atmosphere of your being. Then, what was imagined begins to bloom effortlessly. And when persistence becomes habit, miracles feel ordinary. You stop wondering if things will happen and begin living as though they already have. That steady, quiet certainty is the mark of mastery. Nothing can resist it. Because persistence is not struggle, it's love that refuses to let go of the vision. And love, when sustained, always manifests. Neville Goddard taught that true faith isn't hoping for something to happen, it's living as if it already has. To live from the end means to occupy the feeling of the wish fulfilled now, before any evidence appears. It's not about waiting for the miracle, it's about being the miracle in consciousness. Faith isn't blind optimism, it's inner certainty, a knowing so complete that reason and circumstance lose their power to contradict it. When you live from the end, you stop chasing outcomes. You no longer say, "I hope this works," but it is done. That quiet conviction is the highest form of prayer. It doesn't beg, it doesn't bargain, it assumes. The moment you feel yourself in the state desired, creation is complete in the unseen. The rest is simply the slow unfolding of what's already true. Living from the end requires imagination disciplined by love. You must become comfortable feeling the reality of your desire before seeing it. It's the opposite of how the world teaches us to believe. Society says, "I'll believe it when I see it." Faith says, "I'll see it because I've already believed it." That inversion is the essence of spiritual power. Imagine standing in your living room after achieving your goal. Feel the relief, the gratitude, the lightness in your body. Hear yourself telling a friend about it as if it's already done. The more real it feels, the stronger the faith. This is how imagination transforms into manifestation, through emotional realism. The heart knows before the eyes confirm. To live from the end is also to surrender control. You don't decide how or when it will happen. You only rest in the knowing that it's done. The how belongs to divine intelligence, which arranges the outer sequence perfectly. Faith lets go of timelines and clings only to feeling. The person who can stay in that trust discovers that life delivers effortlessly what force could never achieve. Neville often compared this process to acting. The actor who fully believes in his role doesn't ask if the story is true. He becomes it. Faith is spiritual acting in the best sense. You embody the end until the world becomes your stage. Every word, every gesture aligns with that inner script. And soon, the audience of reality applauds in agreement. Faith also redefines failure. If something hasn't appeared yet, it doesn't mean you failed. It means the scene is still developing. You don't quit a movie halfway through because you haven't seen the ending. You trust the story. Living from the end keeps you emotionally anchored in the outcome, no matter what temporary scenes unfold along the way. When you walk by faith, doubt loses its grip. You stop needing constant reassurance because the feeling itself becomes proof. Even in silence, even in uncertainty, you carry a calm assurance. It's already mine. That stillness radiates outward and begins to shape circumstances without effort. Faith turns waiting into resting. Living from the end also frees you from the anxiety of striving. You realize that creation isn't about getting, it's about being. You start behaving, thinking, and feeling from the identity of the fulfilled self. Life responds accordingly because the universe mirrors states, not wishes. Every time you return to that end state, you reinforce the bridge between imagination and fact. And when this becomes natural, faith feels less like discipline and more like joy. You stop asking for signs. You become the sign. You live in a quiet confidence that what you imagined has already begun to solidify. The senses may still doubt, but the heart smiles, knowing the end is already written, and you're simply walking it out, scene by scene. So now the question isn't whether imagination works, it's whether you'll finally choose to use it consciously. Everything you've heard today points to one truth. You are already creating, every second, through what you feel to be real. The only difference between struggle and freedom is awareness. Once you understand that the outer world simply echoes the inner one, life becomes less about control and more about trust. Ask yourself, what am I imagining right now? What am I assuming about myself, about love, about success? Are those assumptions building the world I want to live in, or the one I'm trying to escape? Because the moment you change the feeling, the movie of life begins to change with it. Persistence, faith, and imagination are not separate. They are one motion of creation. Keep feeling it real. Keep living from the end. Keep returning to the state where it's already done. Soon your senses will catch up, and you'll look around realizing this is exactly what I once felt within. If this message spoke to you, don't let it fade when the video ends. Let it become your daily practice. Revisit it whenever you forget who you really are, the dreamer behind the dream. And if you want to keep diving deeper into Neville Goddard's wisdom and the power of imagination, subscribe now, turn on notifications, and stay connected to this journey of inner creation. Because the next video might not just inspire you, it might wake you up to who you've been all along.